You jibber jab, bamboozle, nuka, noozle, bippity bop, she-call. You jibber jab, bamboozle, nuka, noozle, bippity bop, she-call. I mean, you keep on talking, but you don't know where to turn it off.
Welcome to the weekend. I'm Jon Caldara. You're watching Independent Thinking. I run a little organization called the Independence Institute. You ought to check us out sometime at independenceinstitute.org. I have been waiting a long time to do this show because I saw it coming and it was awful when it happened, and now it's been chronicled in this terrific book called The Blueprint. We'll get into that right after this. First, the authors. Rob Whitwer, good to see you again.
How you doing, John?
A former state legislator.
Yep.
Now you got a real job.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And a man who's never had a real job, Adam Schrager from Channel 9 News. How long have you been covering politics?
11 years here and another 9 in Wisconsin.
What makes politics more fun to cover than sports?
You know, a guest you've had often on this program, Lynn Bartles, always makes fun of me when I say I don't like politics, but I like policy, because I think policy is about people. Politics is about power, and yet what happens? I write a book about politics.
All right. How the Democrats won Colorado. This has been years in the making, and I know that. But I tell you what, let's do a quick graphic here, just to show Colorado has always been a relatively Republican state. Here's what it looked like back in 2004. This is the look of our House seats going to the U.S. Congress. By 2008, those Republican seats turned to this. This is the change in Colorado. I think that map pretty much says it all. Your book goes into detail of how this Republican state became the beacon of how Democrats can win in politics. Give me the overlook first, and we'll get into the details.
Yeah, that map really shows it, but if you put different maps on there, if you put the state legislative maps on there, you'd have the same transformation. Governor's race, U.S. Senate race. In 48 months, the Democrats completely went from the position of being deep in the minority to totally controlling the state. And they did it through a combination of taking advantage of campaign finance laws the way that they changed, not any illegality, but just recognizing the new reality that the party is dead and that the party infrastructure needed to be replicated on the outside. They did that. They built that infrastructure. Then they focused and united towards winning seats. And finally, they did take advantage to a great degree of a lot of confusion and to some degree implosion on the Republican side.
So I know that Fred Barnes of the Weekly Standard did a cover story on this. He called it the Colorado model. And what happened here in this state that turned a red state blue has really become a beacon for the left on how to change policy, how to change politics. You took a Republican state, let's see, we had 5 Republican senators, Republican congressmen. Now they've got 5 Democrats. We had 2 U.S. senators. Now they've got 2 U.S. senators. We had the House, the Senate, and the governor here. Now they have the House, the Senate, and the governor, and they've always had the courts. But what a turnaround. Put it into simple terms before we get into the details. What happened? How did they do it?
It's an interesting kind of confluence, a perfect storm for the Republican Party in many ways, and that the Democrats, they understood the concept of technology. They started to use all sorts of technological means that the Republicans didn't quite understand at the time, didn't embrace at the time. They had a significant amount of resources that came together, and they also had very good field generals and people who knew how to run campaigns. Overarching theme, though, to this is that the Democratic folks got tired of losing. And they all came together. And these are groups that naturally, inherently had policy disagreements. And they checked policy at the door. So you had the environmental folks, the pro-choice folks, the teacher union folks, the AFL-CIO folks, the trial lawyers, all saying, you know, we think this state is going to be better run by Democrats than by Republicans. And so then the conversations around this so-called roundtable that we point out were no longer policy. They were about strategy. And it was a poli-sci 101 class. We're going to market. We're going to find the right candidates that can win in races. We're going to market them. We're going to poll in those races. And then we're going to put resources behind them. At the same time, you had a Republican Party that Governor Ritter points out. He said in 1980, the gun conservatives, the fiscal conservatives, and the social conservatives all forgave each other's trespasses and said, the country will be better served under Ronald Reagan. Now, in 2004 and still in 2010, they're no longer willing to forgive each other's trespasses. And you had those two things happening at one time.
was an incredible confluence of different things. But let's start off this tale with the players, because that makes for an interesting dialogue. And I think you guys did a great job in taking what could be a very dry topic of political strategy and really weaving it into an incredible story of personalities and how people interact with one another. Give me an idea, who are the main players in take it back before in 2004. Who are the main players who said, we need to change this, and I think we can?
Well, the first player is a player that's role diminished as the story goes on, and that was the state party on the Democratic side and on the Republican side as well. And the reason it diminished was not through any fault of somebody working there, but because campaign finance reform limited the amount of money that parties could raise and spend. So they no longer had the ability to spend all of this money to help support their candidates.
So in other words, because of campaign finance reform, the power of the party, whether it's a Democratic Party or the Republican Party, money couldn't really flow through the political machine as much, and so it had to go outside.
It created an opportunity to recreate this party structure on the outside, create a shadow party, as it were. And so at the very same time, you have this change in law that creates this fertile ground for a change. You had 4 wealthy donors and 5 organizations come together at the same time.
Give me some names.
The donors were Pat Stryker, Tim Gill, Rut Bridges, and Jared Polis.
Now these are 4 rich guys. Now, also, so Tim Gill made his money in software. Rut Bridges made his money in technology, software. Jared Polis made his money in technology. And Pat Stryker made her money the old-fashioned way. She inherited it. So you had people who were technologically savvy and had a lot of money. I mean, Pat Stryker was worth, what, $1.6 billion with a B? Yeah,
she certainly a lot of money around that table. I think if the 4 of them got around a table, that table would be worth as much as a couple $2 billion. And but the other important thing you pointed it out. There was a lot of business savvy around that table. And these are people who are accustomed to building and growing businesses and to imposing the kind of discipline on an organization that's necessary to get results out of it. And so the 4 of them came to the table. They communicated with the groups that Adam had talked about, brought them to the table, the trial lawyers, NARAL, pro-choice, the CEA, Colorado Education Association, conservation voters. And they
Conservation voters?
Colorado conservation voters.
These are?
The environmental groups.
So in other words, you had a core group of rich guys who could throw around some money, ante up a lot, and tempt in all these other groups that would kind of fight amongst themselves, but decided to focus in on one goal.
Yeah, and they said, look, we can hang together, we can hang separately. I mean, these groups have been out there fighting in elections for the last few election cycles, and with some success. In 2000, the Democrats briefly picked up the state Senate, then lost it again. But they had never had the opportunity to really work together and focus all their resources, eliminate the redundancy of efforts. But what really made the difference was you had these 4 donors say, we have the resources to help. What do you need? What do you need? We find the field generals in these organizations, people who know politics, people who get it. But what else can we do to create this infrastructure to help? And the most important thing, John, the secret sauce, the secret ingredient was what Adam said. Is they were united. They came to the table and say, we have one goal and one goal only, and that's to win seats for Democrats. If you don't believe in that goal, leave the room.
Would it be fair to say that they did something very unique? That usually politics was candidate first. We're going to go find this candidate, we're going to try to get him to win. Instead, these 4 very savvy people with the money said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to build an infrastructure that does all the different capacities that a good campaign does, and then we're going to find the candidates to fill that we're going to move along. Was there an idea of a long-term vision rather than what we Republicans are great at? Terrific short-term vision, which doesn't give us the victories.
It might have been a simultaneous vision in that there was leadership at the Democratic level and the Democratic Party level that was trying to recruit candidates with long-standing ties to their communities. They were trying to find candidates who were a little more mainstream. We had a pretty prominent Republican tell us, one of the themes to this story is that the Democrats have been able to control their fringe better than we have. They found people.
Hey, as a fringe guy, you got to respect that.